Hello and welcome to Stories Behind the Songs. I'm Jim Tompkins, and in each episode I tell the backstory behind a famous rock or pop song. Today's song is American Woman by the Guess Who. American Woman was a #1 record in 1970 and the Guess Who's biggest song. That says a lot because they were a powerhouse hit-making machine in the late 60s and early 70s, charting 14 top 40 singles in the US, many more in Canada, and 6 top 10s. The Guess Who have been called Canada's first true rock superstars. There's a couple of very interesting topics about American Woman. First is the totally unlikely and odd way the song was created. Second is the burning question that's been debated forever. Is it a Vietnam War anti-American protest song, or is it not? There's never been a consensus on this, probably because the band doesn't even agree on it. But I promise I will shed plenty of light on that. First, let's talk about the Guess Who. The story of this band begins in 1958 in Winnipeg, Canada, when a singer with the stage name Chad Allen formed a rock and roll group called Allen and the Silvertones. The members included Randy Bachman on guitar, Jim Cale on bass, and Gary Peterson on drums. These three would make up 3/4 of the lineup that would produce the song American Woman, as well as the bulk of the Guess Who's biggest songs. Allen and the Silvertones was renamed Chad Allen and the Reflections in 1962, then Chad Allen and the Expressions in 1965. That year they cut a cover version of the song Shakin' All Over, and it would be the release of that single that would lead to the band adopting their very interesting and unique band name. In a stunt to try to boost interest in the single, the record company labeled the group as the Guess Who, ? in the initial pressing. Why would they do this? To try to trick listeners into thinking the song was from a more established American or British band. And it worked. The song Shakin' All Over would go to #1 in Canada and #22 in the US. Eventually, they did reveal the real name of the band, but radio announcers continued to tell the audience that the song was by the Guess Who. And when the accompanying album was released, both Chad Allen and the Expressions and the Guess Who band names were on the cover. It was shortly after the release of that album that 19-year-old Burton Cummings was recruited into the band by Randy Bachman to replace departed keyboardist Bob Ashley. He was so young that his mother made Randy Bachman promise to drive him home after all their gigs, and in general to keep an eye on him. This would turn out to be a factor a few years down the road when tensions developed between Bachman and the rest of the band. Initially, Burton Cummings shares lead singing duties with Chad Allen, but then Chad Allen leaves and Burton Cummings takes over full-time as the lead singer. With this lineup of the group, the Guess Who releases It's Time in 1966. This album was essentially a bridge from the Chad Allen and the Expressions days to the classic Guess Who repertoire, and it did have some success. But it wasn't until 1969 with the release of the Wheatfield Soul and Canned Wheat albums that the evolution was complete. These two albums produced a bevy of great songs, including These Eyes, Laughing, No Time, and Undone. And this is where the story of American Woman begins. It's 1969 and the Guess Who are doing a concert at a curling rink in Kitchener, Ontario. In the middle of their set, Randy Bachman breaks a guitar string. Since he's playing a 1959 Gibson Les Paul, which is a pain in the neck to restring, pun intended, Burton Cummings calls for the rest of the band to take a break. Randy Bachman now is on stage by himself working to restring the guitar. He's kneeling in front of Burton Cummings' piano using the keys of the piano to tune his guitar. The crowd pays no attention. They're talking and socializing, just waiting for things to start back up. As he's tuning the guitar, he starts playing a chord progression, B to D sharp to E. As he's playing this, he suddenly realizes the crowd's no longer making noise. They're listening to him and watching him. So he keeps playing it. He motions to the drummer Gary Peterson to come on stage, and he starts jamming to it. Jim Cale, the bassist, joins in. Burton Cummings is in the parking lot talking to a fan about buying some Gene Vincent records. He's also getting a ton of attention from some very aggressive American girls who had come up from the US. Someone says, "Hey, the band started back up." He runs on stage and says, "What's this?" Randy Bachman yells at him to sing something. In his mind, he's thinking about those aggressive American girls, which the band had seen all over when they toured the US. And when Randy Bachman cues him to sing anything, the first words that come out are, "American woman, listen what I say, hey." And there is the genesis of the song American Woman. But the story doesn't end there. When they went into the studio to record it, it morphed into an anti-war commentary. It was really about the current atmosphere of what was going on in the United States. Uncle Sam wants you in the Army. The Vietnam War is happening. Civil rights protests are going on. They'd seen ghettos in America that they'd never seen in Canada. And then there were those aggressive American girls. What's interesting is that the band doesn't agree about any of this. Burton Cummings has said repeatedly in interviews that he wrote the lyrics and he knows what they mean, and they had nothing to do with anti-war or anti-America sentiments. It was just about his observation that Canadian women seemed less aggressive and experienced than American women. But the problem is, the other guys in the band all disagree. Randy Bachman has said that American Woman refers to the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of America. And the lyric, "Colored lights can hypnotize, sparkle someone else's eyes," refers to Times Square in New York City. But the biggest and most obvious thing is the lyric, "I don't need your war machines, I don't need your ghetto scenes." If this is about American women, what is Burton Cummings trying to say? That all American women live in ghettos and drive around in tanks? It just doesn't add up. American Woman is a protest song mixed in with lyrics about American women. My guess is Burton Cummings doesn't want to say the true meaning because he doesn't want to be perceived as being anti-American. I think that's an unfounded worry. Americans love the song. It was a sign of the times and reflected what was going on in the U.S. in late 1969. And in addition to that, the band had been pressured by the U.S. government and Border Patrol agents to enlist in the Vietnam War. So the U.S. at that time was a fair target. Randy Bachman also talked about where the Guess Who were when they found out they'd hit #1. Which was in a hotel in Iowa. In those days, they'd get to a hotel and there would be a telegram waiting for them, telling them about the upcoming agenda. You go here and you meet a guy named Joe and you play from 9 to 12. Then you go here, then you go there. In this particular telegram, it had all that stuff. Then at the end it says, "Oh, and by the way, you're #1. American Woman, No Sugar Tonight, double A-side, #1. American Woman, the album, #1. All three trades, Billboard, Cashbox, and Record World, #1. They're in their hotel room, jumping up and down on the bed like little kids chanting, "We're #1, we're #1," until the bed caves in. And that's the story of the interesting origin and meaning of the song American Woman. But lest we take the message in the song too seriously, also consider these words from Randy Bachman. It just happened to be a phonetic thing he yelled out. None of us knew what it meant. Later, he put in stuff that meant something to us. The Colored Lights Can Hypnotize was about Broadway, and we'd never seen a ghetto growing up in Winnipeg. The first we'd seen were in Georgia and Alabama. The poor part of the town we lived in was nothing like these shacks. He also said, a lot of people think it's like I Hate Blondes. Other people see it as the Statue of Liberty, the war machine. We didn't think too much about it at the time. Like what John Lennon said, things rhymed and we put them in. Later on, they take on more of a significance, a meaning. I find that sentiment to be almost identical to what Ronnie Van Zant had to say about the lyrics in Sweet Home Alabama. Yes, they had meaning, but they rhymed and sounded good, so they went with it. Here are some other interesting facts about the song American Woman and the band, the Guess Who. One of the greatest ironies with the band and the song is that just 2 months after the song was released, and while it was still at the #1 position on Billboard, Randy Bachman is out of the band. The common story is he left due to his religious beliefs that didn't jibe with the rock and roll lifestyle. He'd married a woman who was a Mormon, and he did feel that the other band members viewed him as the straight guy in the band, the nagging parent. But the other part is that earlier that year he'd released a solo album, and then he made plans to produce an album by the Winnipeg band The Mongrels. The issue was the rest of the band didn't know this. When they found out, they were pissed, and they confronted him and asked him to leave the band. His response? Okay, I was thinking about leaving anyway. So as the band's at their pinnacle of success, the absolute apex with both single and album at the top of the charts, Randy Bachman is gone from the Guess Who. There were at least 2 events that occurred that added to the Guess Who's feelings about the U.S. during the recording of American Woman. One occurred around 1965 or 66, when the band realized that with their current H-1 visas that allowed them to perform and work in the U.S., they indeed were eligible to be drafted into the Vietnam War. So they took those visas and threw them in the trash. The second was a time they were crossing from Canada into North Dakota, and a U.S. border agent started giving them a hard time and tried to get them to enlist in the U.S. Army. That freaked them out so much they turned right around and headed back to Canada. One of the reasons Randy Bachman kept playing the riff at that concert in Ontario after he'd broken his string is he didn't want to forget it. The band didn't have any recording technology with them, so he wanted to drill it into his head. Fortunately for the band, there was a kid in the audience who was making a bootleg recording. They got the tape from him and were able to note down the melody and words that Burton Cummings had blurted out. The Guess Who were asked to play at the White House in July 1970 during a visit by some of the British royals, notably Prince Charles and Princess Anne, and because President Nixon's daughter was a fan of theirs. However, it was requested by the First Lady that they not play American Woman due to the anti-American undertones. They wound up swapping in Hand Me Down World, which ironically was another political song. Gary Peterson recalls that they never did meet the president's daughter Tricia, though they did have a run-in with a daughter of a U.S. senator. She pulls out a bag of grass and puts it on the table. Their manager goes crazy and says, "Are you nuts?" and made her put it away. Burton Cummings does not have good memories of that White House performance. "It left a bad taste in my mouth," he said. "They wanted a Commonwealth act when Charles and Anne were there. We were the token Commonwealthers." American Woman was released as a double A-side with No Sugar Tonight. A double A-side is when both songs are designated as A songs and neither one is promoted above the other. Randy Bachman has said that American Woman No Sugar Tonight was the first double A-side to go to #1, which I wasn't able to confirm, but it seems likely. Other famous A-sides from the classic rock era include We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper by the Beatles, Travelin' Band, Who'll Stop the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival, It's Too Late, I Feel the Earth Move by Carole King, and perhaps the greatest double A-side ever, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions by Queen. American Woman was the first song by a Canadian band to hit #1 in America. The next, Randy Bachman's post-Guess Who band Bachman Turner Overdrive with You Ain't Seen Nothin' Yet. The song structure of American Woman is somewhat unique. The whole song is built around that opening guitar riff, which repeats itself without a break throughout the entire song. Then the guitar solo is layered in on top of that, which repeats whenever there aren't any lyrics being sung. The lyric section is broken down into a chorus-verse pattern, one of those odd songs that puts the chorus in front of the verse. And the verse is hard to delineate from the chorus. It has just a slightly different cadence and the non-repeating lyrics. To me, there are essentially 3 great elements that carry the song. The opening riff, which is chord-based, the riff that's layered on top, which is the solo guitar lick, and the vocals of Burton Cummings, which are just awesome. Burton Cummings has a great and beautiful voice, but in American Woman he puts a real rock and roll growl and nastiness into the vocal.
I don't need your war machines. I don't need your ghetto scenes. Colored lights can hypnotize. Sparkle someone else's eyes. Now, woman, get away from me.
As for the guitar solo, Randy Bachman was influenced by Eric Clapton and the guitar sound in the Cream song I Feel Free. They both played 59 Gibson Les Pauls. He said for that solo in American Woman, he's basically mimicking a woman's voice singing the lyrics. Randy Bachman still has that 59 Les Paul he played on American Woman and says it's probably worth over $1 million. A, because there weren't a lot of them made, and B, one would assume because of all the fame he's had. A reunited Guess Who was in Times Square, New York on 9/11 when the planes crashed into the World Trade Center towers. They stood shoulder to shoulder with New Yorkers and watched on Times Square's jumbo television screen as buildings crumbled about 30 blocks away. About a week later, and before a concert in Boston, they struggled with the idea of playing American Woman, worried it might get a negative reaction as an anti-American song. They decided to do it because, well, how can you not play that song? And the response from the crowd was insanely positive. People were waving American flags and singing along, which goes to show, with a song so powerful and great, people will look right past the message of what it's saying. And that pretty much sums up the success of American Woman from day one. That wraps up the story behind American Woman by the Guess Who. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And I'll be back soon with another story behind a great rock and roll song.